In this video, I'm going to be going over how to animate this robot that we're seeing here, make it jump off of a platform and land on a surface. And in order to do this, I need to be able to do two things with this animation. One, I need to be able to control the animation, meaning as he's falling down, I want to actually stop the animation at one frame. And then when he lands, I want to continue the animation and complete it. And in order to know when he lands, I need to know when his leading foot actually hits the plane surface that he's going to land on. So what I'll show today is some of these more advanced techniques when working with animations in Unity. And I'm starting here in Blender, because this is where I make all my animations, to go over a couple things that I found handy when creating these animations and kind of viewing them and testing them. So what I have here is a robot that I have made previously, and he's all set up with his armature and reverse kinematics. And I've made a basic animation to show him jumping. If you are new to making animations in Blender, I do have other videos that go over step by step on how to do this, and I'll put links to those in this video. But for now, we're starting with this animation, and what I've done is I've created a movement on each individual frame to show my jump, and there's my extended, that's where he's going to freeze and then land. But as I was making this, I wanted to know, is it going to look good when he's going through this? So if we play this right now, we can see that it goes pretty much way too fast for me really to see if it's what I want. And I could do a couple things. I could have created it and spaced out the frames, but it's already made, and so you can see everything is selected. What I can do is I can do the exact same functionality I do when I'm working with meshes. I can scale this, so I'll hit S and I will type 5. And so what it did, and I have to make sure that the current frame is on 1 because it's going to scale from whatever frame I have selected. It just scaled out all of my frames by 5. So now I have 41 frames, and now I can play it. Whoops, I need to go here to my end, change this to 41, and then I can play it. And you can see, and I can watch it kind of in slow motion. If I wanted to make it even slower, I could have done, multiplied it by 10 or whatever I wanted to do. So that's just a handy trick. Anything you can do in the actual mesh editor and layout editor, you can do on your animations also. So now what we're going to do is, let's go back to our layout. Nope, we're going to go back to animation. And of course, the layout goes back to where he was position-wise. So I'm going to start there. Go back to layout, doesn't really matter, but it's nicer to look at him in this position. I'm going to select my mesh and my animation, or my armature. Then I'm going to export it. FBX. I already have the path going to a Unity project, and I am going to click export. I got selected object selected, apply, transform, export. All right, now if we minimize this, we can see that I have a scene set up in my Unity with 3 different blocks, kind of to show 3 different heights that I am going to use in order to show how he can leap off different heights, and it will always work because I'm going to programmatically know when to pause the animation and when to make it continue. So what I have is, I have my robot lean forward that I exported. I'll go to animation. I see my jump animation. I see a stand animation. and I'm going to click loop time to make sure the jump will loop through. And in this case, it technically doesn't need to, but I usually do that unless it's an animation just with one item. And then I have my stand. I go to my materials. I think, I need to reset this for this guy. And I think the other one is okay. So we can see our guy down there looks okay as far as materials. I have to go to my rig, of course. It doesn't have any avatar, so I will create from this model, apply. Now we got our avatar. I had already made this controller for him previously. So now if we drag him on, he's looking a little big. Let's go to the side. Let's scale him down a bit. I usually pay attention to this better, but in this case I did not. So let's move him over an item. Oops. Move him on top of the tallest one. Look from the side. Bring him down a bit. All right, so what we need to do is we want to make him jump off of this. So what do we need to do first? So the first thing we need to do is we want him to fall when he jumps off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy, usually make a prefab out of him. It just makes it easier if you want to make more of them. And I usually edit the prefab versus editing the guy that's in the scene. So I'm going to do is I'm going to add a component, and I'm going to add a physics component, rigid body, mass 1, use gravity. All right, so here he is. So let's run it and see what happens. Whoop, of course he just falls through because he has no box collider. All right, so we need to add a box collider. So let's go to physics, box collider, edit. So we could either edit it here or I could open prefab. If I open the prefab, select, I didn't edit over there. So we're just going to edit it here just for simplicity reasons. What I'm going to do is look at them from the side. I'm going to select this box. Let's scale it up. Like so. Let's move this up to bottom of his feet. Let's look from the top. Make it a little wider. All right. So now we have a box collider, so he won't fall through. So let's run it now. All right, so he's standing there. So now we want to make him jump off of there. So the next thing we need to do is programmatically make him jump. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to my script. And what I've done is I already have a script here called Robot Lean Forward Controller. And I have added this on key down space. I am going to add a force to my rigid body because I've added that rigid body, and that's what we add forces to. And I'm going to add it in the Y direction to make him go up, and I'm going to make him in the Z direction to make him go forward. And I'm going to just take a force of 10 multiplied by some multiplier. I don't know how much force is going to be needed to make him jump correctly. So what I've done is I have this force multiplier here, and I've made this serialized field here so I can play around with it in the Unity editor. So now if we go back to our Unity editor, we need to do is we need to select this guy. We need to add another component, which is the script. And we have Robot Lean Forward Controller script. All right. So now let's play. So we can see when we have the script, we have this force multiplier starts out at 1. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to hit spacebar and oops, I'm not looking at the game. I didn't. There we go. I was already actually running when I showed it, which is why it didn't do anything. All right, so I am going to select this guy. So my force multiplier is 1. And so I'm going to hit the space bar and nothing happens. Well, you can see his position changed a little bit over here, but not much. So now I'm going to try 10. And hit the space. Oop, he moved a little bit. Whoa, he fell on his head. All right, so 10 isn't quite enough. Now he's laying on his head, so I need to stop. Need to try again. So now how about we try 20 and see how that works. All right, so that was pretty good, but all he did is he jumped and he landed, but he didn't do any animation. So now what we got to do is we have to add our animation. So we have our animator right up here. We have to add our controller, lean forward robot controller. All right, and now what we need to do is we need to go to our animator. And it's currently showing our controller that we made. I actually had double clicked on this before and opened it up. So now what we need to do is we need to add the animations to this. But if you watch my previous video when I showed how to control an animation with a walking robot, you'll know that I can't edit or add events to an animation that was imported from Blender. So what I need to do is I need to take this jump. You can see here's our animation. I just double clicked on this before. That's how this came up. If you didn't watch my previous video. And I need to click Shift, click this, click Control D. Control D will make a copy of that. One thing I always do is rename this. Lean forward robot jump. Because one thing I've learned over time is that you don't rename things. You can see I already have another fat robot walk that I did from a previous video. So if I didn't rename it, I'd have a bunch of things with generic names and I'd kind of forget over time and I wouldn't know what's what. So make sure to make useful, meaningful names as you go through and create all these things. So what we're going to do is we can just take the stand, and by default he's going to go and he's going to stand. And I'm going to do is I'm going to make a transition. I'm going to right click, make transition, right click, make transition. So now I have to trigger this transition somehow from code. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to add a bool and I'm going to call it do jump. We also need to control the speed of the animation. And actually we want to change the speed to 0, which will make the animation pause and stop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a float here. And I'm going to call it animation speed. And it's going to default to 1. And I'm going to go click here. I'm going to come over here, say when do jump is true. We're going to do that. And on this, I'm going to say when do jump is false. I'm going to go back. And then I am going to click on this. This is the animation, and you'll notice over here it shows my motion. It's going to run lean forward robot jump, and here's the speed, and I can change the speed to a fixed speed, and this is what we do If we want to match the movement of the speed when someone's walking, we can modify this. But I can also take this speed, which I'm going to leave 1, and multiply it by something. And I click this parameter up to 4 parameters, and in this case it defaulted to animation speed because I declared animation speed over here and it's the only float and it needs to multiply by a float. So you'll see this animation speed here is this animation speed that I made over here. So now what it's going to do is as it's going to run in the animation, it's going to take this speed, multiply it by this. And I can change this speed in my code. So that's an important thing to note. All right, so I have my controller all set up, but now I need to control, somehow I need to know in my code when the animation reached a certain frame that I want to pause. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my lean forward. Actually, first I'm going to go into my scene. I'm going to look at this guy from the side. I'm going to select him. And you'll notice that in my animation, as soon as I selected him, I can see all the animations that are assigned to him. It's going to default to stand, but I can select jump. And now I see all the frames that I created for my animation from Blender. And what I can do is I can grab this, and as long as I have him selected, I can watch the frames go as I drag this. And I can say right when he reaches this frame, his leg is stretching out, I want to pause it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this item here, which is add event. And what it's going to do is it's going to show me all the public functions that I have in my script that I've assigned to it. And so what I did is I made this function freeze animation. So we can come up here. And that's funny because I did not build this. Let's build this first. Let's go back here. And notice that there's no function freeze animation because I deleted it. So I could show you how I'm going to do this. So what I need is I need a public function here. Look. Void freeze animation. Then I'm going to make another one because we're going to need another one to know when the foot hit the ground, right? We're going to need another function. So I'll call it public foot hit ground. Oops, forgot the void. And I need another one that I need to do when I want to restart animation. All right, I'm going to build this guy. Build. I'm going to come back to Unity. Reselect my item, reselect my lean forward, click on my event I made. And now since I added those functions and built, Unity is going to detect that. So I'm going to call freeze animation when it reaches this point. Right there. And then what happens is when it hits the ground, I'm going to want to start the animation again. But I don't really need an event to do that because I'm really going to detect it when I hit the ground. And since I did loop, and I didn't really have to do this, but what I'm going to do is I am going to actually, what I do is I need an event. I still need one more event, and I'll kind of show that. So if I start him moving from this point, when do I want to start him moving forward? I don't want him to start moving forward here. I really want him to start moving forward right there, right before his foot leaves the ground. This is where I want to actually apply that force. So what I want to do is I want to add another event here. And I don't really need one when his foot hits the ground from the event. What I need one is I want to call one called start jump. So let's make these in order. I like things in the order that they're gonna actually occur. Just keeps things a little more organized. Now we'll call this one start jump, because that's really when I want to apply the force, when I want to start the jump. So I'll build that guy. Come back to our animation. Select him. Back to lean forward. Click on my event. Come up here, and now I'll see my start jump that I just added. All right, so he's going to come here. He's going to start the jump. He's going to come up here, flying through the air. He's going to freeze. And he is going to, my code, once the foot hits the ground, I will actually stop the animation. So let's kind of see what we got so far. I usually like to try things out as I go. So let's come to our code. And so instead of doing this here, I'm going to do this here. So I'm going to add the force when start jump is called, instead of when I start my key code. But the thing is, when I start my key code, I actually want to start the animation, because remember, he's just sitting in the standing position right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do underscore animator. So previously in the start, I have this variable underscore animator. That's an animator class type. And it's going to equal my component, the animator component of my Unity object. And again, I go over this in previous videos in detail of how all this works, if you're kind of confused about that. But I'm going to do underscore animator dot set bool. And what I've done is I've created constants, and I usually always like to do this. Instead of having hard-coded strings, I do a constant just in case this changes. And you'll see he defaulted. This is Visual Studio Code, or not Visual Studio Code. This is Visual Studio Community Edition. So it does a pretty good job at IntelliSense, and I don't want to do it to false. I want to do it to true. So what it's going to do is when I hit my key down, it's going to start my animation. When it hits that frame, it's going to call start jump, and it's going to apply the force to it. And then it's pretty much going to let it run through because I haven't really hooked up the freeze animation yet. So let's see what happens. So let's build this guy. Let's go back to Unity. Let's run. Let's hit the space. So he's not moving because remember, we haven't set that force multiplier, because when we were setting it while we were running, it actually goes away after we finish running. So I'm going to set this to 20 actually on the object. And so now I'm going to press space. So he did his jump. Hey, he's actually jumping forward over and over and over again. All right, so he did what we wanted him to do. Let's run it again. Is he started his animation, and at the right point we added the force, so it looked like he leapt off at the right point, but then he never stopped. So we need to make him stop. So remember that, let's go, select this guy. Let's go back to our item. So remember, at this point, we are going to call freeze animation. So what we want to do is we want to stop that animation. So what we've done is remember we added, let's go back and just review, we added to this guy this multiplier, this animation speed. And I can actually access that from my code. Just come in here. So in the freeze animation, I'm going to do underscore animator. I don't want to do set bool. I want to do set float. And I'm going to click animation speed, comma 0. So the multiplier will now be by 0. So of course 0 multiplied by 1 is 0. So the speed will be 0 when we freeze animation. All right, so let's build this. Let's go back to here, back to our scene. Let's run this guy, see what happens. Spacebar, and then he froze, which is exactly what we want. And he stays frozen because, of course, we have not yet detected when he hit the ground. So how am I going to do that? All right, well, that's a second problem. Because if we select him, you see this green box? This is, right, that box collider, which is making him not fall through the block. And let's see what happens when we run our animation. Watch that green block. The green block does not move and it does not change. Right now, his head is outside of that and his foot's outside of that and this foot's way up here. So I can't use this box to detect a collision. And the box doesn't change as the animation. It doesn't move with the animation. And I need my collider to move with the animation. So how do I do that? All right, let's see how we can do that. Let's go back to here. Zoom in. So what we can do is a couple things. So one thing is I didn't add, here's the box collider. This is the box collider I assigned to my prototype. And this is the box collider I assigned to here. So I'm going to change this box collider. I'm going to actually do it on my prototype instead of the one this is really annoying. This happened before. All right, I'm going to go in and I'm going to select that guy. My box collider. I'm going to open prefab. I'm going to do this all on my prefab because it's going to be a lot easier to do what we need to do. So I'm going to select this, move this up here. Not a big fan of their item here. I can barely see that. Nope. All right. Against that white is not very visible at all. I gotta change this. Not really critical that I change it that way, so let's do that. Let's do that. There we go. That's better. Yep, so that's looking pretty good. We got that box, but we don't really want that box. That box is going to make him not fall through, but it's not going to help us detect when it landed. What we need to do is if we go to our armature, what we want to do is we want to attach a box or some type of collider to a bone, because the bones move. The bones are part of the armature, right? And the bones move when the animation moves. So if I add the component, so let's make a box collider and attach it to the bone. So one thing that's confusing is that for some reason it does not know how big the bone is. I don't know what it does, but it makes it huge, which is confusing. So let's shrink it down. Let's take a look. All right. So there's a couple issues here. You'll notice that the box is not straight up and down. It's at an angle. And the reason it's at an angle is, let's go back to our animation, is I'm attaching it to this bone right here. Go into edit mode. It's attached to this bone right here. I've hit F2. It's foot. Oh, that's foot left, but it doesn't matter. It's foot right I'm attaching it to, and it's at an angle. And so it aligns the box with the angle when we do that. But I don't want that. I want the box to be parallel to the bottom of his foot. So I need to fix this. So what I need to do is come back into here, and I need to select this bone. I'm going to hit F3, actually hit 9 to flip them around. I'm going to extrude along the y-axis an extra bone, and I'm going to name it foot bottom dot R. Doesn't really need the dot R in this case, but I like to keep in that habit. All right, so now I have a bone that's parallel to his foot that I can now attach that box collider to. We'll just save that guy. We will re-export him out. Let's go back to object mode, select, export, FBX. He's already there, but that's okay. We'll keep robot lean forward.fbx. I've had various success with exporting over one that's already there. Many times it works, and sometimes it does not. Unity doesn't always update everything, but I think in this case it will be fine. So that guy disappeared because we need to come into here. This rig is still there. Let's go back here. Yep, he's still there. What we're going to do is drag him over here. Let's drag him on. Need to scale him down. Oops. All right. We will delete this guy. Drag him back here. I'm going to open the prefab. Let's expand that guy. Let's assign our box again. There we go. Cut it from the top. There we go. So now what we got is, let's look at our armature. Look at the root, leg right, middle leg right, lower leg, foot. Now we have a foot bottom. Now when we assign our box to this guy, let's look at him from the side. Still a ginormous box, but now it is parallel to his foot because it's going to align with the alignment to the bone. Let's scale him down. Zoom in. Oops. Come back. Little boxes are not very big. Not the greatest UI here, but we do what we can. All right, let's look at the top. Still really wide. Scale him down. All right, that's close enough. So now we have a box around his right foot. So now when we come back, let's exit out of here. So one thing, we really don't want this. We already have a box to keep him from falling, and we don't need him to be a collider. We really want him to be a trigger. So I'm going to click this is trigger because we just want a function call when this guy collides with the plane. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to select this guy. So now we see our box that's around our foot. And let's just actually, well, the problem is we got to go here. We have to rehook up our animator or controller. There we go. We need to add our script. All right, that's all set up. Now, you'll notice as soon as we hooked up the controller, we can see this guy now, and now you'll see that that collision box now moves with his foot, which is what we want, right? Right? He's going to sit in this. So right when he hits the plane, this will be triggered. But the problem is you'll notice that this box that wasn't moving, that was surrounding him, is actually bigger. It extends below where his foot is. So in this case, this is going to strike the plane and stop his movement before this guy actually strikes the plane, which is going to be a problem. So what we need to do is go back to our prefab. We're going to look at it from the side. We're going to select that foot, going to edit, and we're going to stretch him a little bit bigger down because we want this to trigger right when it hits the plane. And it's not going to be precise, obviously, but it's going to be close enough that it will tell us, hey, I want you to start moving that animation forward, and then he'll drop that last little bit as it completes the animation. So let's go out of here. Select this guy now. So now you see that is below. Go to this. Let's drag him forward. Let's watch. Stretch. So now at stretch, this box comes below that. We could tweak it around a little bit, but this is good enough for now. All right. So what we want to do is when that strikes, we want to call a function that is going to start the animation again and finish the animation. So if we go to our code, we can see what I've done is I already wrote a function to do that. So on trigger enter, of course, is where all the triggers get called, and it's going to pass the collider. And I only want to do this if I collide with an object called plane, because that is what it's called. Those cubes are just called cube 1, and cube 2. And when it strikes the plane, I want to set the animation speed back to 1. All right. So that's set up. I believe that was built already. We'll try it again. So now let's go and let's play the game. Oops, a couple things I forgot to do since I re-brought it in. One, I need to get him back in position. So let's do this. Let's move him here. Look from the top. Move him this way. The side again and move him down a little bit. He'll drop down on his own anyway, but let's get him close. And then we forgot we need to add that rigid body. Let's go back. Physics, rigid body. All right, it's all set up. Let's hit play. Yep, there we go. Let's hit space. We forgot something. We have to go into, let's select that guy. For our force multiplier. All right. There he's froze. All right. We got to stop that animation from playing. So we could do it two ways. What we're going to do, just for simplicity's sake. I'm on some Reddit. They keep popping up. All right. Let's select this guy. And let's unselect loop time on him, because we really don't need that. Hit play again. Freeze. And down. Perfect. So now what we can do is, let's try this. Let's add another guy. Grab our prefab. Since we did everything on the prefab, all is there. Right? So what we're going to do is look at it from the top. I'm going to move them over the shorter of the boxes. Let's look at it from the side. Bring them down. All right. Now let's run. So now what should happen is it doesn't matter how tall he's going from, because really programmatically we're making him land. Oops, we forgot. We actually added that rigid component to the item instead of the prefab, but we'll do this quick. Should really be on the prefab. But just for demonstration purposes, we can see it doesn't matter how tall or how short it is. Play it again. So we can watch both of them. They both freeze, and when they land, they will complete the animation and go back to the standing pose. All right, so what we showed today is two things. One, how to control our animation through events, and two, how to attach a collision box to a bone in order to detect when his foot actually lands and hits on a plane. So I'll be doing a couple more videos on some other aspects of controlling animations in Unity. So like I said, I did a previous one on some similar things, making a robot walk around, and I've done other videos covering all the aspects of creating the animation, creating the armatures and matching them on the meshes. I'll put those links in if you need a little bit extra help around there. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helps.